Let's try to look at some. I'll call this the poise and exclusion of Dasein, an attempt to um, ask about Dasein in the context of the Socratic picture of man. But it's in a sort of partially part of a provocation that I've been shaken by online with respect to Dugin as abandoning the tradition because he accepts René Guénon. So first of all, let me do a quick analogy between. So, of course, Catholicism isn't the only form of Christianity, and Dugin doesn't represent that. But let me. It's somehow often pointed to as a clear version. So Thomas Aquinas' position as against an attempt at an analogy between Thomas Aquinas and René Guénon, but understanding that they're only at the point of mystery are they really analogous. Otherwise, there's all kinds of differences. In Thomas, he says you start with discussion and the exclusion of the realm of death, which is the pure mind. So by that I mean where Thomas is saying things like that geometry is. In fact, Thomas has a particular position, which I don't know if it's accepted by the Catholic system per se, which is that the reason orders geometry and the pure mind in death, as it were, the Socratic death. And how do they call it? The actus, what is this called? The potentia ordinata. The potentia ordinata. So this is contrasted with other Catholic theologians who took the position of the God's powers are unlimited and therefore geometry doesn't have to remain what it is. And this is an objection which is super important for Heidegger during the period when he's going into the problem of psychologism, which was a big deal for Husserl. But that's sort of in passing. But anyway, Aquinas's version is a little bit like, well, it seems weird to say this, I understand that, but from like the way it feels, but I think it is in a way this Plotinus saying of this Plotinus view of the you have to leave the demiurge behind, and we have to leave the temple images behind. Go out from the penetralium or the sanctum sanctorum of the temple and leave the temple images behind to get to the genuine mystery of the hen or the one in his head, the Plotinus version. And then, but in Aquinas, what he says is, for instance, that you can prove the relations of geometry according to him, but you can't prove the existence of God. So he doesn't really accept any of the proofs where we say something, a stats or a sentence, and then we think of how composed, what is the poise of this thing? What kind of elegant repose does it offer us? And he concludes, none of them really can we stay with them. They're not, the place that they present to us isn't good enough. None of the proofs of God. None of the proofs of God that take that form of saying something and then kind of, does it make sense? Whereas when we do that with the two right angles of any two triangles, we look and we say, yeah, it totally makes sense. that they could those two angles equal the same as all the angles in three triangles, which is harder to, I would start that, which is a bit harder to envisage directly, but that it's true from the proof of one, or seemingly, yeah. But then you can ask, is there actually an empirical question, and that would be basically involve the controversy about the ordinata. God has to make it this way. That's because it's rational, or um, the unlimited potential of God to do whatever He wants. Um, the absolute potentia absoluta. So Thomas is saying, yeah, there's something beyond. So the details are different in the way Guénon arrives at this type of position, and then therefore Dugin in a way too. But they said there's something mysterious that requires faith, that requires something more. And then that means we can't have I think the direct corollary of that is we can't have simply and easily a rationally convincing system that could then be promulgated around the world and connected to a code of laws. So that by the Catholic way of thinking, I think that you could say the universal and international code of laws is not obviously possible, except that we make a lot of considerations about matters of place, and giving place as much weight as anything else. Not of geography, I don't mean per se, but I just mean you're in the Chinese place, or you're in the all the books that Dugin wrote about the different nooses. You're in the Polish situation, the Polish place, Polis topos, and there will be a lot of questions like that. But then I guess in Guénon, Guénon Dugin, I'm saying, is kind of similar to that, in that this opinion, it seems to be at odds with the Catholic tradition, with the whole tradition of and also the guy who's, I guess, more thinking of Islam and philosophy. There's one nous, it's just that, which I take that's what Socrates said, sort of, as it were, naively, without even raising the notion that there could be other nooses. The notion that there could be other nooses, in a way, is like the notion that the agathon could be evil, that the agathon might not be what it presents itself on, which is like sort of like the Greeks naively, in their enthusiasm about philosophy in the first beginning, their emotional state was such that they rejoiced at the sweetness of the whole thing, and they didn't pose this question. And then the first time it's positively questioned, this is what Strauss says, and apparently, so far as I can tell, it's true, is in the book on nature by Lucretius, which is I think in the 2nd century of the Common Era. But anyway, it's quite a bit after Plato, right? So, yeah, again, this notion of the many nooses, as it were, properly, I think, is it is directly parallel and analogous to a notion that there could be more than one nous. So it's very destructive of the idea. I mean, if the good wasn't really good, then it ruins the whole idea, right? But the way to get around, I mean, that's not the positive way that it would be stated in a Catholic source, I don't think. But this question is recognized, and that's not the positive way Guénon states it either. But I'd say this is basically the type of theme we're talking about, is that when, in this sense, there's the denial of the positivity of being, it's sort of to say, yeah, there's a point where this Socratic reason comes to a halt, And that's the point where theology started, according to Thomas. But it's also this point where we could raise all kinds of questions to demonstrate that to ourselves, why that's sort of the case. But you could still be an optimist, or have hope or something, or the quote Gramsci or something. Although that wouldn't really make sense. His saying wouldn't really make sense, because it says what the pessimism of the de facto and the optimism of the intellect, or whatever. It's not exactly. I mean, because the de facto, if you make it larger, would then include also the sort of composure of the realm that Socrates thought was the metaphysical realm, the realm of the dead, or the realm of where things are eternally the case, where this very diremption would occur, this very lack would suddenly appear. Oh my God, the agathon is not really. We never questioned it. We always assumed that the good was good. That maybe your light is actually darkness, and so on. And then I mean, this kind of thing was said in the Christian tradition, I believe, for millennia, but it wasn't said in exactly this way. And it was also, I would say, it was only said to say the fools have done this, but we ourselves, we know the faith. They still have the naive faith. Yeah, there's some fools that have taken light for darkness. That's obvious. They're blind. This was said of the Jews for a long time in the Middle Ages. There was on churches, sometimes there'd be a Jew with a blindfold on. They're blind. They missed. They've taken the darkness for light, or whatever. But it was never. And then you had all kinds of tales of dark nights of the soul, and things about somebody has really doubted. And it wasn't just because they're a criminal who didn't really care. It was they doubted because they really confronted the issue, and on a mystical level, and their faith was absolute, but they encountered it at such a direct way that they couldn't avoid this encounter. So it's like it befell them almost. Like it's so you can't really blame them in any way. There's no defect was involved. But you have tales like that, and they're sort of like triumphalist tales, because they already, basically the idea is, here's this mystic, but of course he overcomes these things, and then he got to the truth. And the fact that he struggled so much makes it all the more proof of the matter. I mean, I'm stating it in a cynical way, obviously, but at the same time, the cynical view can't be excluded entirely. It's there, it hovers around, it's like a gas. And if you then say it's not really a cynical view, it's just what we're confronted with. We're confronted with this radical dispensation of fate, this mystery, radically mysterious dispensation of fate. And in a way, I think Thomas already admits that. So they went on, and Dugin admitting it. And then what they say is, the practical result is you can't really know things that well, but you can say in a little bit of a way, this is better, this is worse. Although you could see that when stressed, seems like a contradiction. If you turned it into a generalized rule, and then you say, how can you not know, but at the same time have some sense of better and worse? And then you have to do some distinctions or something, and demonstrate why that is. But it kind of does make sense up to a point. But it's tricky, right? So, but all I'm saying is, these two positions are, in a way, correspond to the traditional understanding. And the difference then, if you think about it with Socrates, clearly this whole realm where he's discovering things which correspond to natural law later on. I think it's only with the Cicero, maybe, or with earlier Stoics, that this seeming contradiction in terms of, because that's basically the meaning of the distinction that like Bap is raising in the claiming that Achilles already knows that nomos and physis, that there's a distinction between them. Physis is like brute strength, and nomos is the pacts and laws and money. that he knows that this distinction exists in some way, but he doesn't have the concept. But the natural law people, which is fusus nomos people, starting with Cicero, are in a way saying they're in a way destroying that bifurcation in a different way by saying the paradoxical thing that there's a nomos which is natural. But so then, being aware of the funny way of stating it, deliberately stating it this way, there's naturally we, when faced with that situation, we come into some difficulties, and this difficulty is then that there always claims to be something outside the stream of coming forth